At Ameren, Missouri, we know what light can do. It draws people together and chases monsters away. And if you shine it in the right direction, it will light the path for the next generation, showing them what their tomorrow could look like, and spotlighting the possibilities that lay in front of them. Investing in our community by lighting the way forward. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Put the roasted down. You all have enough rises?
Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics on a very historic week in Missouri politics. This week the governor resigned after a lengthy investigation and several things. He decided to step aside. He mentioned doing the best thing for his family and the state. However, we're looking now to next week in Missouri politics. Special election this coming Tuesday. Clay County in the Northland. Representative Kevin Corlew, you're the Republican candidate there. Thanks for joining us again on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here with you.
Let's just start with the first thing before we get into the campaign. You've served in the legislature every week of this process since really the beginning of session. What was your reaction when you saw the governor, you saw his wife join him in his office? When he gave those comments, what was your take?
Well, I think the governor did the right thing in stepping aside, putting his family first in the state of Missouri. I think all of us have learned that our state is bigger than one person. Yeah. And what we're trying to do, though, is to focus in on the future, move us forward, to continue to talk about the issues that are important, the issues that we're focusing in on our race, and looking forward to working with my colleagues, with Governor Parson, and moving forward on issues that will move Missouri forward.
It is an interesting time. We're talking about moving forward. Senator Ryan Silvey served Clay County in the House, as you did, in the Senate for several years. Now he's on the Public Service Commission. Give me the top issue in this campaign, though.
I think the top issue in this campaign is still focused in on good paying jobs, making sure that people can make a decent living for their family, work hard, bring home the food for the table, and ultimately provide a good living for their family. And in doing so, that's the message that we've been trying to get out, that I'm the leader who can provide policies that will do just that.
Let's talk about that tax cut. It's amazing. I don't think anybody that's observed any legislative body ever would have predicted, with some of the background things that could have been distractions, it actually provided maybe even just ground cover for the most productive session Republicans have ever had. And maybe at the top of that is the tax reform that you were a part of. Can you give folks just a little breakdown on what it's going to mean to them?
Right. We were able to do a tax cut this year. I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race that voted for that tax cut. It will put money back into Missourians' pockets, and then specifically in our area, in the Northland, it will allow our Missouri workers to make sure that they have more to take home. And therefore, they're going to be able to spend more in the economy. It'll be a win for all of us. It's an example that the people of Missouri, the Northlanders, they know how to spend their money better than the government does.
That's kind of, to me, when you talk about the difference in the parties, that's the key thing. One party believes you should have more of your money. The other part believes the common good can be put together to do different things. But jobs, the Northland is a place that's growing, that is successful. When you talk about things that can actually transition that, the Northland creates jobs in our state that are not just like a $10 an hour factory job. There's some higher paying jobs there. Education is one of the things that makes Kansas City an attractive place to come to. Tell me what the legislature did on education, and specifically that would affect Clay County.
Right. We do have some of the top schools in the state in my area, and many people move to the Northland because of the great schools. It's a great place to raise your family. You know that you can get a great education for your young people, and that's why I'm proud to have consistently supported full funding of our education formula, which the legislature this year was able to do for the second year in a row, providing record funding for K through 12 education, providing additional funding for pre-K education and even transportation. So I'm proud to be a part of that. Having been on a school board in the Northland region, I know that those dollars are tremendously important to making sure that we can provide the innovative learning experiences that are necessary to prepare our young people for future jobs.
All right, tell folks all around the state, what school board were you on?
The North Kansas City School District.
North Kansas City.
It's the largest Missouri district in the Kansas City Metro. Has about 20,000 students. It's a vibrant community, very diverse school district, and it's one that will provide great education for our young people.
Let's talk one more thing. When you came on, you served in the legislature, you made yourself stand out, but I thought where you really took the bull by the horns was last year. You chaired a committee on infrastructure, and I always thought that, you know, it's an adult issue. A lot of times, to actually talk about how to build roads and bridges, one of the things Harry Truman did in Kansas City, it's actually a big boy thing. You chaired a commission and you brought some of those recommendations to the legislature. What does the state need to do to adequately fund building roads and bridges?
Well, Scott, we have the 7th largest state highway system in America, and our roads and bridges, some of the largest numbers, and unfortunately, that system which our grandparents built has been deteriorating through neglect and just because we have not prioritized transportation infrastructure the way we need to. We've invested in our transportation infrastructure at a rate of only 47th in the nation. So at some point you need to address that. You need to say transportation infrastructure is something that's important not only for the safety of our people as they commute to their jobs, as they travel to Missouri destinations, as they visit loved ones across the state, but it also moves the economy. And so that's been such an important issue that I've heard both before I was in the legislature and in the legislature from constituents. So I took it as a priority of mine to really work on that issue and to see if we can move forward. And I'm proud to say that the legislature has and will continue to do so.
You know, to me, you're running against Representative Lauren Arthur on the Democrat side, both good legislators. It's an interesting thing. I watched this with Ryan Silvey, a pretty moderate politician by today's standards. Him being in the majority party gave him a pretty big advantage in the state Senate as able to get things done. I mean, you could filibuster. Filibustering from the minority is something that Democrats do. If you have that ability in the majority caucus, why is that the important thing?
I think that it provides effective leadership for my area, the Northland, that I'll be able to provide that kind of leadership. I'm in the majority party. However, Scott, as my track record has shown, I'm a truly independent candidate in terms of being able to reach across the aisle, work on issues that really matter to people, like jobs, infrastructure, like getting the Real ID bill done last year to make sure that Missourians don't have to get a passport simply to fly to Chicago or to go visit their loved ones on a military base. So that track record of reaching across, building consensus, making sure that it's not about party, but it's about the people of Missouri and specifically the people of my area in the Northland.
Representative, thank you so much for joining us on This Week in Missouri Politics from here in Kansas City.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it.
We'll be right back. We're going to take the show on the road with former Senator now, Ryan Silvey, and current Senator Jason Holsman after this.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Put the road together. You all have enough prizes?
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics from our Kansas City studios this week. Normally we have an opinion maker panel of 4, but when you have a senator and a former senator, especially these two, we only needed 2. Senator Jason Holsman, South Kansas City, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Former Senator, now Commissioner Ryan Silvey from the Northland and Clay County, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I mean that as a compliment. I'm not saying you're going to filibuster the whole time, but I'm glad to have both of you on. Senator, historic week this week that'll be talked about in Missouri probably for from now forward. The governor steps aside. Obviously, there was a reason why he stepped aside, and there was a reason for the clamor for it. But in the end, he did keep the House from having to do impeachment votes and those type of things. The little honor in stepping aside, maybe.
Well, it's not over. You know, he's allowing the state to begin the process of healing and turning the page on this chapter. But I think that what we see is precedents being set, and we didn't like the precedents that were being set out of the governor's office for a variety of behaviors that are clearly what led to the resignation. But now we need to go ahead and follow through on making sure that the confide and the dark money and the issues that were prevalent in this discussion have a resolution so that folks who come after this governor understand that that's not tolerated in Missouri politics.
Now, Commissioner Silvey, you're somebody that pointed out, you called him like you saw him, not only when you're in the Senate, even after you were appointed by the governor. At the end, though, stepping aside, there is some honor in stepping aside so the state can start to move forward.
Well, I think there's a collective sigh of relief,
certainly,
that this is over. At least this phase of it's over. I think Governor Parson is the right person to step in and try to bring calm to the situation. I think you'll see whereas Governor Greitens tried to shake everything up, I think Governor Parson will try to calm everything down, and I think he'll be successful in doing so. So the fact that he stepped aside as opposed to dragging this out for another several months and requiring the House to vote to impeach him, I think is ultimately positive for the state.
So it's an interesting thing, though. You talk about whatever happened with Confide, whatever happened with the dark money group. Is maybe the bigger picture, there could be people that start pitching reforms that actually change. I mean, what's happened has happened, but looking forward, what are the I know both of you were part of a group that called for an investigation of ultimately the issue that led to his resignation a year ago.
Right.
The group of 7 senators, the 2 of you were 2 of them. To me, though, is it not more important maybe to focus on how do you come up with some actual statutory things that prevent dark money and things like that?
Well, we tried last year to get a disclosure bill through. Senator Schaaf, who is now exiting the Senate, was instrumental in trying to get that to the floor. And it was filibustered by Senator Onder at the time and other interested parties in trying to make sure that those dark money donors aren't disclosed. But it's always someone else's problem until you're the focus of it. And when this governor attacked members of his own party, that sort of opened some people's eyes that says this is a dangerous tool in an industry that already suffers from integrity issues with how our politics are delivered to the populace. And I think that from this, I hope from this will be some sort of reform. That we say our state is not going to tolerate anonymous attacks on members of the legislature when this money is the main thrust of communication to the population, and we deserve to know who is spending that money on behalf of these attacks.
So there's a lot of folks that argue there are groups, there are truly independent groups that should have their donations secretive. But to me, the coordination law, that's where I think reasonable people can argue whether certain interest groups should have their donations secret. But when it's that closely coordinated, it just seems like it stepped over a line.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the concern is not about the groups or having these groups so much as it is about what are they doing with their money. I think when the focus of your group becomes spending money in a political fashion, then I think there needs to be disclosure. But if you're looking at like a broader group that happens to hire a lobbyist occasionally or run an ad about an initiative petition or something, then I could follow that argument maybe a little more. But I think, the senator's right. I mean, hopefully some of the members who were blocking our discussion of disclosure last year, having gone through this with the governor, will now maybe have a little bit different view of it and let it go forward.
And we had protective triggers in the reform bill that would have thresholds for contribution limits that would remain anonymous. I mean, we understand that there are groups out there that don't want to have reprisal from having their donor list become public. And that's not what we're targeting. We're talking specific political activity that is designed to try and influence the politics of legislation.
Let's talk, I'm sorry.
Well, just one of the triggers, I mean, that we talked about, we're not talking about people who pay $50 a month or $50 a year to be a member of an organization. This is clearly not what was going on. With a New Missouri and some of these others, people were not $50 to get a card that said they were a member. It was hundreds of thousands or even perhaps millions of dollars from a few sources that were really driving that conversation.
So now Governor Parson, one of the first lieutenant governors to become governor in any sort of recent history. What kind of person, Senator Holsman, is Governor Mike Parson to work with?
Well, he's a good person. That's a good fundamental building block for leadership. Is he's just a good person. I also think he's uniquely suited. You know, the timing of this happening and him being in this place, you know, Lieutenant Governor Parson spent more time in the dais watching the proceedings of the Senate than anybody else, ever. I mean, he was there late into the night with the gavel in his hand. So I think that his learning curve is going to be shorter. He watched the debates, he listened to the debates, he saw the issues, he saw the votes, he partook in the crafting of that legislation as much as you could from an executive position. So now when those bills are going to be in front of him, he's going to have familiarity with them, unlike someone who may come from the outside who doesn't know the unintended and intended consequences of that policy.
It's an interesting thing. I mean, you're former senator from Missouri. He's from Missouri. Maybe the first governor to ever find out he was going to become governor while baling hay. I mean, different turn guy.
You know, when that news kind of leaked out that he was in his field with the cattle, when he got the call that he needed to come to Jeff City for the situation, 100% believed it. The first time I read it, I was like, that's absolutely true. There's no question that that's
former
how this
sheriff. You know, he spent 11 years in the legislature. He was in the House. He was in the Senate. Those relationships that he generated during that time are going to be important, and just knowing the process, understanding compromise is a part of moving things forward. He handled the bonding bill, which wasn't in the traditional Republican lane, but I thought he did that very well. And I think that he'll bring that experience into the executive mansion, and I'm looking forward to working with him.
One of the leading Democrat senators. I watched him in the dais a lot. It was impressive how many hours he spent there. I thought he made efforts to be fair. Remember the end of last session, there was a PQ process that he made. He went, you know, it was a way he thought was fair. I thought he did a pretty good job of trying to be fair in the dais while he was there. What should a Democrat know?
Well, you know, all we ask for whoever's running the dais is they call balls and strikes fairly. And it's a position of power in the Senate where it could be easily abused. And especially if you have an agenda that's not going to go the direction you want it to go, you can try to use that power to influence that. And I thought Lieutenant Governor Parsons did a fair job, and he called balls and strikes fairly. And I felt comfortable when he was up there that we might lose on the issue, because when you only have 9 of 33, you're not going to win those votes. But give me a fair chance to use the rules as they're constituted. Give me a fair chance to be called on and recognized, and to have the part of the process that we play as minority members. And he did that. And so I think that given the chance to see him work in that environment, I have a fair amount of comfortability that he's going to take that into the governor's mansion.
Right, so he's a conservative Republican. Voted the conservative line most all the time. I think maybe the biggest difference, maybe the only difference people are going to notice between Eric Greitens and Mike Parson is his style.
Yeah, I think you know what Senator Holsman said about knowledge of the process and relationships is going to be huge. I think Missouri is about to experience a night and day object lesson in what it means to have inexperience in what we've had in the last year and 7 months, or year and 6 months, and now experience. I mean, what he learned coming through the House and coming through the Senate, and the relationships that he made are going to make his job immensely easier than what we've seen in the last year.
So let's talk about what you've been doing for the last few months.
Sure.
You left the Senate to come to the Public Service Commission. Tell folks what that even means.
So basically, it's utility court would be like the Cliff Notes version of it. So there are 5 utility regulators in the state of Missouri. We make determinations about investor-owned utilities when it comes to their rate structure, when it comes to their corporate structure. We are essentially regulating those monopoly industries.
While he was doing that, the Missouri legislature had probably, and I don't know anybody that could have predicted this, the most productive session ever for Republicans, certainly, but maybe ever just period. I mean, it was an odd dynamic. It looked to me like, just sitting around a table talking politics, that the distraction of what happened was on the second floor where the governor's office is. On the third floor, they were just cranking out bills.
I think it was a coalescence of 2 factors. You know, one, it was a 2-way conversation, not a 3-way conversation, and those direct discussions led to some compromises. And then I think also the fact that in the term limit cycle, we talk about term limits, there was a large group of seniors in both chambers that they were in their 8th year of doing this. They understood that this was the time to compromise, and what you saw was a lot of issues that had been pent up for many years find their way to that negotiation spot, where the minority was clearly, from a minority position, there was legislation that passed that I would absolutely not want to see pass. There's some anti-worker laws that passed, but we try and influence that the best we can. And when you have professionals who have been doing this for 8 years, and I don't think 8 years is long enough, as we can talk about in a little bit, but they finally get to a place where they understand you have to give a little to get a little. And some of these bills found their way to truly agreed and finally passed.
So, I mean, you were a block away, but you still talked to a ton of folks that are in that Senate.
Sure.
It looked to me like the situation that was happening around them brought out some statesmanship on both sides.
Yeah, I would say that's absolutely true. The legislature continued to do its job throughout the course of all of the distractions. Even while the House had a committee and reports were coming out and news was coming out, a number of members stayed focused on the issues that they were there to work on, and I think that overall the legislature did a great job.
All right, I got to ask you about the one thing that didn't happen, your SJR that would have changed term limits. Give me the 2 seconds on what that was. What happened?
Well, that's a little longer than 2 seconds. Bottom line, this is a SJR that would have gone and voted the people. It had a change in term limits coupled with a lobbyist gift ban. I had secured a commitment from the floor leader to bring that up for a vote. I'm not a freshman House member. I don't need to have time on the floor for my bills. This was an agreement to bring this up for a vote. And they tried to amend it twice. Both of those amendments failed. We demonstrated we had the votes on the floor. Floor leader didn't bring it up till 5:30 on the last day of session, which only gave us a half an hour to negotiate on the floor. And of course, I'm on the side gallery just watching it all unfold. And after after the House members defeated both amendments, the floor leader laid the bill on the calendar, and thereby killing the opportunity for the people to vote on it.
Do you think it's a framework moving forward, though, that folks will come back to?
I'm going to certainly try again.
Yeah.
I think that we made the argument successfully that term limits have had a destructive force in the Assembly policy quality, and the arguments are just as valid today as they were before it got laid over. So.
All right, let's talk a little politics now. Tuesday, special election to fill your seat, state Senate seat in Clay County, or as our folks here call it, the Northland. What's the dynamics of that race?
It is one of the last true swing districts in the state. We have 2 experienced candidates that are both House members. They both have equally fervent bases within the district.
Both serious legislators.
They're both serious legislators. They're both policy wonks.
Yeah.
Which as a policy wonk, I love to see that. If I'm not going to be able to represent myself, I'd like to be represented by one of them who wants to focus on some serious policy. So I think it's going to be an interesting race. I mean, we've never had one in June. Like, people aren't used to going out and voting for their senator in June. So from a political science standpoint, it's going to be interesting to see who shows up and who doesn't, and that race could really go either way.
So that is a swing district. It's been an off year, both traditionally throughout the nation. Good years for Republicans both times. Senator Silvey won that. He had maybe a bigger name ID in that district than either of these 2 candidates have. Are Democrats fired up enough to win a special in June? Yes, and I will tell you that Lauren Arthur is an excellent candidate. I also worked well with Representative Corlew, so whatever happens in that race will move forward. But I will say that Senator Silvey
was able to win that district by representing that district. And yes, he was a Republican, and there were votes he took that were, you know, partisan in nature, but connecting with a swing district and representing a swing district in a way that is very moderate in nature is why he was successful. I think Lauren is the right person for this job at this time. I think she's going to do a great job, and I do predict her to win the seat.
Senator, give us the prediction. Who wins?
I think it's too close to call. Yep. I mean, when you drive around the Northland, you see people fired up on both sides.
Is there a buzz about the race right now?
Not as much as there is in a normal race. I mean, clearly, but you know, there are people, neighbors talking. Like you'll see a sign pop up on your street, and what, I didn't know there was an election. You know, so yeah.
Give me a prediction then on a ballot issue. Right to work, does it pass?
No, I think it gets overturned.
Labor win in August, even?
Yeah, I think it's clear that Missourians like a strong middle class, and they see the labor movement, while it's only 8% of our workforce, as being sort of the barometer, the canary in the coal mine for workers, and I think they'll support their middle class workers.
There's a ballot issue dealing with cannabis policies on the ballot. Does that pass?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
I think so too.
I think they might both pass and cause a little bit of legal ambiguity.
There's 3 of them. There's 3 initiatives.
Wow. I think they all 3 pass then. To be honest, I don't think people are going to differentiate.
The first one on the ballot, though, is the best policy.
One thing we've learned about lately is chaos creates a lot of business for lawyers.
Yeah.
Who won the week?
I would say the state of Missouri, the General Assembly, and Governor Parsons kind of all share in the fact that we're ready to move on.
Who won the week?
I think you heard me talking about this before the cameras went on. Yeah, the state of Missouri, I think, clearly wins.
I'm glad you asked me first.
That this distraction is finally over, and that we're going to have serious leadership moving forward.
I'll say the state of Missouri, the leadership in the General Assembly, the people that wrote the Constitution. They're pretty smart guys. I want to thank both of you for joining us. We didn't even need 4. I knew when you were both on, we only needed 2. We will see you next week to talk about another, what I'm sure will be a very eventful week in Missouri politics.
Brought to you by SPIRE, the Missouri Association of Career Fire Protection Districts, and Sterling Bank.
My name is Eric Philippi. I'm a veteran, a carpenter, and a father. When Eric Greitens said he was going to change politics as usual, folks like me didn't think the first thing he'd do as governor was take dead aim at our jobs and our families' livelihoods by working to repeal prevailing wage. Call Governor Greitens. Tell him to protect prevailing wage and to protect my family, not destroy it.
All across Missouri, our new car and truck dealers are building strong local economies. When you buy a car or truck in Missouri, you're helping to support over 20,000 Missouri families who rely on the auto industry for good-paying local jobs. You're also helping fund our communities, schools, first responders, and our roads, because dealers generate millions of dollars in tax revenue. Missouri's automobile dealers have been the foundation of our communities for generations, and for generations to come. The Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, the heart of Missouri.
Put the roasted down.